the agenda is performance measures. Welcome along, Nicole.
Good morning.
Look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, and councillors and staff. So these are a regular report every quarter. They're based on your previous work from the previous council for your long-term plan. So they are locked in. What we're trying to do now is also have a bit of a percentage variance so that you're able to sort of track. We will talk about these measures in the future for your next long-term plan, and given all the news of the last few days will probably become very pertinent in how you're actually just measuring the organisation as it's going through its quarterly cycles. So I'll take it as read, and I do want to thank Councillor Paul Harrison, who read all of his notes and did inform me that there was an error. So we fixed that, and just to let you know, it's not in any previous info, it was just in this quarter. And we have now locked down areas of this information because it goes out across the organisation to quite a few staff. And if anybody accidentally, and it can happen, changes something on there, we don't always pick it up. So I take that on board for the final check. And going forward, we won't have that happen again because, as I said, we're going to lock down sections of it. So the only information they're filling in is literally the quarter report. I haven't got too much to talk to you about here at this stage because we don't tend to get a trend until we get to sort of the second quarter. But what you have got is the information from the previous year, but also from your resident survey to look at. So I'll leave it at that point, and if there are any questions, I will either endeavour to help you or other senior leaders around the table.
Cool, thanks for that, Nicole. Sandy.
I just had a question for Dan and Taimakiki Rural Scheme. Plant not shutting down due to weather event. I was surprised at that because it's a deep water well. Is that affected by weather, or how is it affected by weather?
So sorry, where's that one?
Actually, Dan, can we get you to come up to the table? It's just that people can't see you.
Yep.
When we're live streaming, so. Yeah, cool, thank you.
It's in there.
So that would have been the power shutdown.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, because cold. Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Any other questions? I've just got one here. In relation to what page, Mr. Oh, sorry, on page 8, performance measures waste management, quarter 1, and that under compliance with resource consent conditions.
Yes.
And that where it says we have to have full compliance and we're not compliant. When it says in the explanation, Makiki landfill not compliant, no action required, and I see that there's on a couple of those.
Mm-hmm.
So what? We're never going to be able to be compliant if
that's right. We would have to.
But it says there's no actions required.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the terminology used by Environment Canterbury.
Right.
Yeah. So we're sort of governed by the reports that we get back from them.
Okay. So is that a mandatory measure?
No, that's covering off the closed landfills.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So realistically, then probably our measures of it is a bit ambitious, because that's always going to be a non-compliant one, isn't it?
Yeah, technically.
So obviously our measures wrong.
Yeah.
So it's something to think about, and it's a really good highlight of just when we talk about the measures coming up,
yeah.
we really think about what we're doing and what we're measuring, and if it's a pertinent measure.
Right, okay.
Can I just ask?
Yes.
I get asked a lot about the Waiho landfill, and I'm guessing it happens elsewhere. It's there. Is it monitored?
Yes.
Because I see there's a sleeve there.
Yes. Yeah. So we do monitor it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unless it reaches the threshold, it's compliant as per monitoring.
Yes.
But it can never be compliant overall.
No, it can be compliant. That would be based on nitrate triggers.
Yeah.
So I suppose the question is whether we relitigate the consent conditions to reflect the groundwater condition, but relitigating a consent may not be the best thing to do.
No, and the other thing too is, as we've all seen, the government's rates cap legislation, we're not going to do anything we don't have to do because we won't be able to afford to do it. So,
and through you, Craig, just for new governments, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but the consent conditions for the release limits for nitrogen are lower than the background ground nitrogen levels. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, you know, I've seen farmers up in Canterbury found that too, coming out of the, off the hill, higher than what's permitted, which is just crazy.
I've got a question just on page 7, and it's about the providing a safe transport environment. How does, as a council, how does that become our responsibility where it says number of fatalities and serious injury crashes is less than the previous year on an annual basis? I mean, surely that's something that's completely out of our controls, bearing in mind that our roads are up to scratch.
That was my question. Were those under the influence or were those road issues? That's the question.
The cause of any crash is three-pronged: driver, road, vehicle. So we have responsibility for the road. So there'll be a road factor with every crash, most likely.
So that would say,
I might relate to that.
okay,
Not all roads, even if roads are up to scratch, there might be something wrong with them that contributes to a crash.
so those are the ones that would
Leading could be, gravel on the road could be.
yeah, so those are the ones that are only relevant to this reporting. We're not taking into account whether it was alcohol or anything else, or speed, or
We have responsibility for a great number of roads in this district, so without knowing individual crashes and looking at the NZTA reports, etc.
so we don't get those stats.
I don't know, but the road, I just know from previous experience that NZTA look at those three factors. The road is equally as important as the other two.
Okay.
So through the mayor, the information for this comes from the CAS system, which is basically a register held by NZTA.
Yeah.
So we've got no control over what's in that register. So the police will attend, and that register will have all of the information in relation to that crash. You know, whether it's a left-hand bend, what factors were at play.
And I think the value of the measure is if you are seeing a number higher than you would want to see, then those are the conversations you can have with the local police or NZTA. It may not necessarily be the fault of the road, but is there something else going on in the area?
But you're noticing a trend.
But you're watching a trend. Have you got more visitors coming through? There's a richness in the information sometimes that enables you to try and target.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I totally get that. I just couldn't understand why that was something that would be
well, we would be
why
responsible
we're responsible for that target. Yeah.
Yeah.
If there was a large factor due to road, surely they would tell us so, wouldn't they? Or
Yeah, we would know that, and it's the frequency of those serious crashes as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, does this only do our local roads? So this excludes the state highway stats?
Yeah, excludes state highways. It's just our roading network.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's good to know.
No? Any other questions?
Couple. Yep. Rick, just because we'll talk about the elephant in the room. Residents are satisfied with performance of elected officials, resident satisfaction with sufficiency of information supplied by council. Are we doing anything to address this? Page 12 of the agenda. Organization and governance.
If I can, through the chair, and I can start some of the answers to that, but then I know Stuart may have something on Michelle, but you had quite a long conversation about our website and sometimes the ease of finding information. So Michelle was working with Stuart and with the rest of us on how we actually try and streamline, how we get some better information through the website. And obviously you're live streaming now, so a lot of that, unfortunately your measure was a little low because of your live streaming, which we're now doing and meeting. So it is something in the past that we look at, learn from, and then look forward. I don't know if Stuart wants to add anything to that.
We will have a proposal coming to council through a workshop shortly on a number of fronts to do with promotions and communications to address those concerns that they've raised with me.
I think the other thing too is that this was done prior to the live streaming.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
that's one thing that's probably going to affect that now,
Yeah.
is the fact that we're now live streaming.
Exactly.
So,
Just with the live streaming, I mean, it's good we've got it available, but wouldn't we have to monitor how many people are using that? Was there a way of doing that? Because, I mean, it's good we've got it, but if people aren't using it, it's a bit irrelevant.
Yes, so you can get the information via the chat through YouTube as well, because once it goes up there, you can see.
Oh, okay.
how many views there is through YouTube and stuff like that.
Yes.
I think the point is though that our community know that these meetings are live streamed.
Yep.
It's up to them to watch these meetings and inform themselves. It's no good not taking the time to do that, but sitting back and then complaining that they don't understand or know what we're talking about. So the value of live streaming is very high.
And looking at the YouTube, it's not necessarily that they're watching the live stream, but they are definitely going in afterwards, because you can look at the live stream figures on the day of a meeting and then go in 2 weeks later and they've tripled. So that's the great thing about it, is that people don't just have to watch it live, they can go back and watch it in that historical.
And I think the difficulty too is the age-old problem is I don't have the internet, I don't read the newspaper, I don't have Facebook. The council never tell me what they're doing. So it's you can lead it across the water, but you can't make it drink, sort of thing. So I think, as I've said before, I believe this is one of the most transferable councils around. We hardly ever do anything in public excluded, and that or close workshops. So
I think we just keep putting the
we just
information
keep plugging away at it, and what'll help is the likes of you and Stacey talk about doing a newsletter in your ward. That sort of stuff helps. We'll just keep working to improve it. Something else, Rick?
Just 2 red dots that I'm looking at should be green dots. Again, I'm not sure. On page 16, we've got resident satisfaction parks and public spaces greater than or equal to, greater than or equal to 80%. It says 87, so shouldn't that be?
Resident satisfactory parks and public spaces are greater than, yes.
And then the one right below it?
Yeah. Those
73 and 77?
changed, yeah.
And then there's a water service one as well. It's greater than or equal to 80%. We're sitting at 80% on that one as well.
We're locking all of these up and we double check them again, and so I apologise.
Yeah, don't apologize. I know it's a tough thing to.
That's what I picked up.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. When we find the other one, it's in the water.
It was just an observation too that satisfaction with seal roads wasn't hugely different to the middle roads, so I was just a bit surprised. But yeah.
The other one was on page 9 in the agenda. Nope, not that one. Sorry. Where was it? Percentage of resident satisfaction with water service. It was 80%, and it was red, but it was greater than or equal to
I'd like to
80%.
have a look at the system that we're doing this with, because we corrected all of these and as we've saved it into PDF, so my apologies.
Sorry, 70%. It's on page 7.
Yeah.
At the bottom, less than or equal to, and it's equal to. So let's get another green dot there.
Okay, I've just got a question on the annual progress of economic development strategy, economic indicators. It's got a red dot, but surely that is related to central government, costs and things like that, rather than the general cost of living, and rather than council related. Wouldn't it be?
What page on, John?
Page 15, right up the top one, which talks about year-on-year increase talks about their GDP and building consents and things like that.
So update annually at the end of the financial year, so we won't have anything, so that's the previous year's results. We
Okay.
won't have anything until the end of this next financial year to be able to update you. And again, and through the chair, Stuart has been working on that information. Previously, they're looking at how you're going to do economic development going forward, and
Okay.
again, I think there's some papers and information coming to you on that. So it has been noted from the
Yeah.
resident survey, and will come forward for
Big-
discussion.
I'm just thinking because it comes back onto the council, where it's maybe
Yes.
not council related as much as your general, New Zealand state.
Yeah.
State of the economy rather than just council related.
Exactly. So again, when we sit down and think about the performance measures going forward, and we're supposed to be supporting economic development in the district, then having some measures or something that is connected to where you can shift the dial is probably more important than.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, that's good. Thanks for that.
I think, John, it does, although it's not necessarily a direct council influence, it's useful for us to be aware of the trend.
Yeah.
Because, and particularly in the climate that we're moving forward into, when we're looking at what we can and can't do, these things will help inform us, like just how is our district going as a whole. And so some of this I think we take a little bit less personally, but just be aware that this is how it's affecting people.
I think that the trend is important to take note of it, but I don't think we should be judging whether
On it.
I don't think we should be judging the council on that, whether we with their GDP and things like that, it's not, it's more central government rather than us.
I think the thing with this though is it'll be red, green, because this comes at the end of the financial year when we get the data.
Yeah.
So,
So your dots at the moment are looking past.
Yeah.
So what we can do is how do we shift the dial going forward? If we're in the green, then given that there's a fiscal future and you're wanting to be holding there because you don't want to spend money in areas where you can't shift the dial anymore and you're comfortable, your residents are comfortable in that area. Looking at the areas in red, what are the things that are out of control? And that's going to be the landfills and so let's put an explanation there. And then anything else where we feel we can really shift the dial that makes sense, then we can concentrate on those areas as we go through this next year. They're locked in at the moment. We've noted these as what we're going to measure for the long-term plan, but it's really important at that next conversation as we go forward for the next long-term plan. How some of them are mandatory, but others you can better fit to your situation and your circumstances going forward.
And there's so much water to come under the bridge
Yeah.
for, like, these could significantly change depending on what happens in the next 12
Just the
months.
number of building consents, aren't they already up this year?
yes,
I mean,
Yeah.
there's things that if you look at other sections, you can say, well, this is happening. And if you look a couple things down where we're 85% of positive perception, 3 percentage points, I think it's red, but it's still positive. It's still, I think the views of living in Waimate is
and that's,
changing year on year and becoming more of a positive.
yeah, I think and we've had this conversation around, some of our targets are very aspirational, we're never going to meet them, or we're actually penalising ourselves.
You are, yeah.
And I was just thinking it'd be quite nice even to have another column in here with national averages
Yes.
and that.
That would be
That'd be
fantastic.
good,
Do
yeah.
you want me to look at that?
Yeah, if you could look at that, if there's
Yeah.
well, it's not too much work, I don't want to put you in
No?
and that, but that way we can compare it against the national average.
When you say national averages, though, wouldn't it be better for a rural
Yeah, like for like.
like for like?
I don't know whether the data's broken down.
It should be.
Infometrics is the website, and I'm happy to share that again with you. It has some very rich information as we go through, just sort of economic indicators, but they're picking all of this up from Stats New Zealand and various places and putting it together in quite a nice format. So we'll play around and have a look at that. Your performance measures, are your strategy, you know, you form your strategy and then you pop your performance measures against it, and that's the whole point. Are you tracking where you want to go? So it's quite an important conversation to have, because it does get you thinking about where you want to steer the council as governance. And I think they're really important pieces of information for you to dig into and play around with.
So that's the reason we're going to be doing in the new
Absolutely.
year.
We'll have a new workshop on that and start to think of that for the future.
So essentially, could you say that the library services is well down, but I mean, there's been disruption, there's been improvement.
That's the
Yeah, well, that's what's difficult, because the survey was done over the period of the pop-up library.
Yes. Yeah.
So the next one will be of our new library facility, so I would expect to see
Way better, wouldn't it?
a lift in that.
Yeah, and some measures are only done through a resident survey every 2 years.
Yeah.
So something like the library, what we can do is to bring you some updated stats of where things are tracking. No, you don't necessarily have to do that. It's quite easy for me to pop some information in there and say, well, this is where we're now at the moment, to give you some background.
I just think that this is not telling the true story, because we know from the Infometrics that do the data, that did or the people that did the survey, you know, they've asked us if they can use our council, because we are one of the top performing councils and that sort of thing. But this sort of makes us look.
I think that's where that comparative data is really valuable, because you can say, actually, compared to other similar councils, we are performing incredibly well. And takes into account, like, there are certain areas where society is kind of generally less happy, or they're not fun, you know, and so, like, you know, rating is always going to be a challenge. It hurts people, it's a tax, effectively. And so I think having that comparative to national figures will really help balance it out. And I think the thing that's heartening for me is I see a lot of these areas that are currently sitting in red. Many of them we cannot address until we get the new resident survey. So they're just going to sit in red. It's not going to show, you know, it's not that we're underperforming now. It's this, that we actually don't have the data yet.
The difficulty too, Jackie, is that this is the first quarter, so you can't take a lot from this, because it's only the first quarter for, and a lot of those reds will turn green as we move through the year.
Exactly.
It's difficult to get a trend out of your first set of results.
I think as we get to the half year point and we start to put the national data in, your previous year, those columns will sort of tighten up a wee bit, and it's behind us other than the lessons learned. And then let's start looking at where we are, looking at the last 6 months, and then thinking, is there anything there that we want to just tweak the dial on at some point, and then looking to the future about how we springboard from where we are now into taking account of what's going on in local government.
That's good. Any other questions for Nicole or Dan?
Fix these dots.
If it's not, thank you very much. That's great. We're ahead of time.
Wonderful.
So we're now on to agenda item 2. That gives me great pleasure to welcome James with his checkbook.
I live in the car. You have a car.
So what we might do, James, before we get underway, just a few new faces that you won't have met.
No, indeed.
Obviously after the election, so we'll just quickly run around the table, starting with Lisa.
That's me. Hi, Lisa from the Lower Waimate board.
Rick Stevens from the Waimate board.
John Beck from the Waimate ward.
Yep.
And Jackie Guildford from Waimate board.
Paul Harrison, Hacker, Wairunga.
I'm Stacey from Pariora, Taimakiki.
Sandy McWheat, Pariora, Taimakiki, Northern Ward.
And hopefully she'll know me.
Yeah.
So welcome along.
Thank you. You've got my presentation, that's great, that means I can do that.
Just a quick reminder, James, we are live streaming.
Yep, I noticed that on the way up.
Yep, that's
perfect.
cool.
Try not to say anything that isn't a printable.
That's all right.
Can I control the presentation, or do you want me to just?
I can do that.
Yep, no, perfect, wonderful. How long have we got, Mr. Mayor?
Long as you need.
Oh,
We've always got time. We've always got time for NZTA. And we've got our next 11.
Yeah, we'll stop probably
Plenty
quarter
of
to
time. Good.
11.
Probably should.
That is plenty of time.
About 3/4 of an hour. We'll stop it for morning tea.
That's
about
great.
3/4 of an hour.
That's perfect. Look, this presentation, has it been circulated? Have you all seen it yet, or this is the first time?
No, this is the first.
I'll run through it. It is designed to run through the basics. If we've got questions along the way, I'll try to answer them. Please just best to butt in when something occurs, because I can't tell what connections are going to be made or not. And if I think I'm going to get to it, I'll tell you. But hopefully we'll have time at the end for all the specific questions or the what the hell's happening here kind of stuff, right? But designed as this is the start of the triennium, to just reset, establish the baseline, explain who I am, what we do, and how anything that's likely to come up in transport, how that connects to us and how I can help. But as we said, my name is James Cagle. I'm the Director of Regional Relationships for NZTA for the West Coast, for Canterbury, for Otago, and for South. So we divide the country up into 5, just because it is large, and because the nature of land transport is that it's delivered in partnership. Sometimes, I'm afraid, you will get the feeling, as I run through this, that we sit from our offices in Wellington and dictate how things are going to be, and there's not a lot that you can do about it. But the honest truth is that land transport doesn't happen without local government. Vast proportions of the network, I don't have numbers particularly for here, our local roads, they are yours. Yes, we regulate them, but none of it happens without your delivery or your rates or other income going towards it. We try to help where we can, but most importantly, I try to help you navigate the system, because the system can get quite complicated quite quickly, particularly in moments of change, and we've all got enough change on right now. But look, in terms of what we do, the thing to focus on is on the right. We've just recently refreshed our internal strategy, the way we think about what we do, and I think it's really good because it really does clarify our roles. And those are those on the right. So we help plan, and we certainly try to maintain what we would think of as capital T, the plan, for the land transport system, particularly over the long term. We are just in the process of refreshing a 30-year plan, trying to have a view for what the next 30 years requires and needs in terms of transport investment nationwide. But some of that if that's of interest. We clearly invest. In this 3-year period that we are coming into the 3rd year of, in terms of the 3-year cycle we work on in terms of funding, we will invest somewhere in the order of $27 billion. It is no small amount of money. We have never invested that much money before, so we are investing more money than we have ever invested before, and it is fair to say there isn't nearly enough money in the system to do everything that everyone wants to do. So not only where we invest, but frankly where we don't, is clearly quite important, and is often the thing we talk the most about.
So you're not regulated to how much you can, in terms of increases?
Yep. Absolutely. Come to that.
Sorry.
No. Really good. The short answer is yes and no, but it's a dialogue, and we'll come to that. So we don't set our own revenue. We are receivers of revenue, but we do set within bounds. Again, I'll come through it. Where that money goes and how. And so we pay that key investor in transport outcomes function. Come to regulator now. So we are largely the land transport regulator. We regulate things like rail safety. So we have a role in rail, but we are not the rail provider. We do also fund a proportion of the rail system. About $1 billion of that 27 goes into rail. We're not by any means the largest investor in rail, but we are a regulator of rail, but we're a regulator of any other activity in the land transport system. And the easiest thing to think about that is we regulate entry and exit in the land transport system. So if you want to bring a vehicle into the system, we're the regulator that assesses whether that vehicle can be a part of the system. we regulate exit from the system, and we regulate behaviour while it's in the system, whether that's driver behaviour, vehicle behaviour, all sorts, right? Legal road signs, all of that, that's all us. And by the different types, like vehicles, heavies, drivers, as I say. We are a major infrastructure deliverer, particularly when it comes to state highways, but not exclusively. We are a large capital project deliverer, and so sometimes we end up in discussions kind of like the one we've ended up with just north of here in Ashburton, where, we've gone through the investor bit and the planning bit, and yes, we've agreed there needs to be a second Ashburton bridge. Ashburton don't really have any expertise in delivering bridges. It's not their core business, it's not something they're used to, and it's a bigger project than they would be up for normally. It's quite costly and risky for them to stand up that expertise. We'll partner with them, that's fine. We'll project manage it, it'll be our project. Partly that's to do with how we're funding that, but mostly also it is actually it is a core part of what we can do. We are a very large capital project deliverer. I'm sure we'll come to the bridges that we're building and replacing in the district. So yeah, that's exactly right. We're an asset manager. We manage the Crown's largest single asset, and that's the State Highway Network. It's valued at just under $90 billion on the Crown's books at the moment. So that is the single largest asset the Crown owns. We're often in dialogue with local communities about whether we're managing it well or not, how we're managing it, how better to manage it, all of those sorts of things, but there is no escaping that core function. We are an asset manager. And the last one, considered a bit oddly for some people, and certainly if people have memory of our regulatory failures from the last decade, that can come up. But increasingly, we really are trying to pay attention to the fact that we are a customer service provider. Regulated parties are not customers. We don't want to trip back over that problem in the past where, they're a customer, we can't make them angry, by regulating them properly. No, that's, to be really clear, that's not what we're talking about. But when you go to get your driver's license renewed via the AA or VTNZ, they are our contractor. You are really interfacing with our systems, and it genuinely is our legacy systems, which are old and creaky and hard to use. And we have to be conscious of that. We have a lot of very old systems that we are trying to run a modern and efficient transport system on. And we ought to pay attention to the fact that those systems are old and need significant update. And government certainly would like us to put some time and effort, and we will, into updating those sorts of things. So you will see, if you pay attention, you will have seen, but you will see more soon around things like digital driver's licenses and those sorts of things, because they are ways of substantially improving the customer experience for people. When you drive on the state highway, that is a customer experience. You are receiving a service, and we ought to be a bit more cognizant than we have been in the past about whether that experience is worthwhile or not, whether you're getting value for money as a customer.
So just before we move on, in relation to the regulator role, and that, one of the things that is coming to the fore now is the cost of road closures for the likes of our Christmas parades, our Anzac parades and things like that. I was talking to the lady who organises our Christmas parade, and like the road closure of the state highway from the Catholic Church through to Centre Square for that Christmas parade is now getting around the range of $4,000. Now, obviously, this is a voluntary organisation that has very limited opportunities. They're selling cakes every weekend out of our community market to raise funds to cover that. Is there any work being done in that space, James, around how do we get a bit more practical for those types of events? It's the same with our Anzac parade is held out of the event centre. We walk up here. We literally walk 20 metres onto the state highway. But we have to close the state highway for that, because we don't want this man in court because someone gets bowled. Because ultimately, it falls back on our CA.
So yes, actually the next slide does deal more directly with our regulatory functions, but actually it's not in that sense strictly our regulatory functions. It's our duties under the Health and Safety Work Act, and that's in a bit of flux. To be clear. We are busy transitioning the industry nationwide from what we call the the guide for temporary traffic management. The code of practice from a code of practice code of practice for temporary traffic management into a guide, and that effectively is moving from a prescriptive, in this situation do this, lay these cones here with this amount of spacing, follow it like this, to what is the risk? How do you best manage the risk? What is enough to manage the risk?
Yeah.
And that flows down into things like your traffic management plans for events, the skills required to sign those off, and therefore the cost required to do them. And I think the whole transition, it's a really important transition designed, amongst other things, to reduce simply the number of cones that get thrown at things mindlessly, as though putting a cone in the road axiomatically reduces the risk. It doesn't. You've got to do it properly and do it in the right way. But it's also, I think, caused a bunch of the industry, and including ourselves at times when we assess things, to sort of seize up a bit and go, I'm not, a bit like rabbits in the headlight, I'm not really sure what we need to do here. Right, great, I'll sort of grip it up really tight and say no. You ought to see over time that everyone, A, upskills, but B, arrives at a much more pragmatic situation. And if the risk is high, we genuinely do need to ramp up the traffic management. But I know the sorts of things that you were talking about, and they're genuinely relatively low risk, and we can all serve to be a lot more pragmatic about them. Whether I say that should result in reduced cost, I'm not sure I can guarantee it, but that is the direction of travel that we're heading, and certainly the desire that we're trying to achieve. And it's interesting, actually, we're actually heading in the opposite direction of the Australians, who have been much more at the sort of risk-based approach and are now being more pragmatic. And the Australians are seeing their costs go up as they transition in the opposite direction, and we should be seeing our costs trend down. Coming back though to our strict regulatory function more clearly, look, that is really laid out there. And just to pick up the revenue side of things, so we don't set the level of revenue, but we are responsible for collecting and enforcing that revenue collection, right? So the level of fuel excise duty or road user charges, that is set by ministers. We then have to plan to manage based on what we think that cash flow is, and so we have no guaranteed revenue. So when something like COVID hit, dropped the amount of travel that everyone did, our revenue fell through the floor. We did have to turn around to the Crown and say, excuse me, if you still want us to actually build all these things, you're going to have to top something. That sort of thing happens, and we certainly are in heavy dialogue regularly with the ministry and the minister about their planned, their desires for future works and the amount of money that's likely to cost, and therefore the revenue that we are likely to need, but it isn't something we actually control. So yeah, we're responsible for gathering it, but we don't set it. If that
So are you
sense.
part of the conversation around the new road user charges model?
We absolutely are, because it is a system we will have to run.
Yeah.
So in that sense, yes, we have to design it for them. We have to tell them what will make sense or not. But the input number, how much we're charging, how much, that's set away from us.
You would have input on that though, because obviously if it's too low,
It's absolutely. It's not a graph I have in this book.
no, you're right.
I
was just curious.
have a paper copy, but it was hard to see. But there is a graph from the current National Land Transport Program. You can see a yellow line going up and a grey line going down. The grey line is our future revenue, and the yellow line is our future expected expenditure. There is a massive gap, which we will come to, between what we're being asked to build and the amount of money that we can predict coming into the system. So yeah, we're always in dialogue with ministers, but to be clear, it's not something we can change. It is absolutely a separate account.
And of course, the government will cap it at 4%.
Not
We'll see what they'll do, Mr. Mayor. Let's jump on to the next slide. So look, to be clear, we are in that sense a Crown entity. Of the Crown entities, we're classified as a Crown agent. So we are required by law to give effect to government policy. and as set out in the LTMA, and that really is most importantly set out by this document, which I love carrying around. So ministers can make a lot of decisions, but there's some things they genuinely can't do, and just because a minister stands at a podium and says something in front of a microphone isn't something that we go off and jump to. They actually have to issue us instructions in the correct manner, and the usual most frequent manner that's issued is the government policy statement on land transport. So this is the version that was issued 24. The minister is busy right now working with us, because there's a whole bunch of factual information he needs from us, but mostly working with the ministry, drafting the next version of this, which I would expect you would see in public in terms of public consultation sometime mid next year. And that will set the terms of government policy for, actually the ambition is for the 10-year period from 27-37. They are trying to move from a 3-year cycle to a 10-year cycle, but I expect that 10-year cycle will look very much like your 10-year cycles. That's 3 plus 7. You know, it will still have a clearer 3-year period in front and then the future 7. But we are, particularly when we interface with you in local government, we are quite mismatched at the moment when we are only operating on 3 years and you are trying to do 10-year LTPs. You're doing a capital program out there far, and we're giving you revenue guarantees only as far as 3. It makes your capital program actually quite hard to predict.
It'd be nice to align our budget process as well, because that's a real problem.
In terms of timing?
Yeah.
Come to that. but
make sure I'm getting it
all.
No,
absolutely. I fully expected you to raise it. But to be clear, this is the sort of government direction that we respond to, and it very much ties our hands in a lot of respects. And it is worth noting that this government policy statement that was issued by Minister Brown post the last election, and as I said, I expect the minister to issue a draft by mid-year next year. I also expect, given that there is an election soon after then, probably next year, that whatever shape of whatever colour the incoming government is post that election, they will look at the GPS and draft and do either a small or a dramatic change, just based on the results of the election. So I wouldn't expect a final GPS until the very end of next year, if not possibly even the beginning of the year after. But the trend in recent years has been to be quite prescriptive in the government policy statement. No, I don't. It lays out that sort of revenue expectation over the period. But it also divides that revenue up into what we call a bunch of activity classes. Just think of it as buckets of money. You know, you are allowed to spend no more than, because it sets maxima for our board, no more than X on local road maintenance, for example. No more than Y on rail. No more than A on state highway improvements. You know, and so it divides that revenue up across the 3 into those buckets, and then leaves it to our board, based on the policy outcomes the government wants to see, to make individual spending decisions. And that's the dividing line. Our board is statutorily independent when it comes to saying yes or no to particular projects. In fact, government isn't allowed under the LTMA to tell us which projects to fund. It can tell us to go so close as to do something in that corridor, but that something is still left independently to us. And it can be something up to this amount of money in that corridor that you'll appreciate can be quite constraining, but it can't tell us to build that bridge. And that's really the line that this walks quite closely. The 2 things that this government policy statement most constrained us and local government on was by confining the monies in particular pots to particular levels. It very heavily pushed us both, local government and us, into more road maintenance. Okay? And it pushed us, as the state highway operator, into investing heavily in the 17 roads of national significance. And from your point of view, it's worth being really clear. You know, the only 2 roads of national significance in the South Island are the Hope Bypass, just south of Nelson, and what we call Belfast to Pegasus, and the Wooding Bypass, just north of Christchurch. Right? Those roads of national significance take the absolute lion's share of new future investment for state highways. So if you have a desire for state highway investment that is outside those RONs, our hands are tied. That is a conversation you need to be having with ministers.
What makes something a road of significance?
Literally them deciding to put it on a list and call it that.
That's all it is.
It is all it is. Okay?
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure they will say these are important roads. I mean, it's very clearly what they say. The government is saying these are the roads, these are important to us, these are the roads we want you to focus on. But it isn't more than that. It is that mechanism, I'm being really clear, it's the mechanism because the government has told us to focus on those, we go and focus on them. That's just
I
us
think they
doing
look at a
it.
whole number of sort of criteria, you know, economic benefit, congestion.
Yep.
I'm sure that's a
Yep.
whole raft of things to
Yep.
look at.
So just, look, this is a pig of a diagram, but actually it's kind of telling because it's a pig of a diagram. This sort of shows how revenue flows through. So we take the revenue on the left-hand side, the vast bulk of which is fuel excise duty and road user charges. There is a small amount of money in there, a few percentage points in terms of registrations. There is very little at the moment in tolling, although that is envisaged to be a larger revenue stream in the future. And we are instructed, again, by the government policy statement, to look at tolling for all of the roads of national significance. So as those projects move through, we have consulted on tolling. And whether or not something is tolled is ultimately, again, a decision for ministers. But if they decide to allow us to toll and we've recommended tolling, then that money will flow back into the MLT, into the fund.
Just a question on that. Just a thought, if you've got toll roads, does that apply for bicycles that are using them as well?
Typically, we're only really tolling motorways, which bicycles aren't actually allowed on. Yeah.
If it was a general road, if it wasn't a motorway?
We actually haven't encountered that yet.
Right.
In New Zealand. Genuinely, I think the few toll roads that we've got in New Zealand, we don't have any instances of that. It's a really good question. I suspect, again, we would probably only want to recommend tolling on places that were motorways, where cycles are prohibited. It's a good question, though. I'll go away.
Let's talk about the Woodend bypass being tolled, though, isn't it?
Yep, but that's, again, on the motorway sections only.
Right, okay.
And so there aren't, cycles are excluded from those. There are other alternative paths for cycles, but they can't be on that roadway, so that's not legal. But yes, Woodend bypass is a really good example. It's a RON. It's a RONs. As we've investigated it for tolling, we've consulted the public on tolling, and that recommendation's working its way through our system, and then ultimately we'll end up with ministers. The decision about whether it's tolled or not is a ministerial decision. If it is, we will then administer the toll and collect the revenue, and around the circle goes.
And depending on how close it is to an election, as we
whatever ministers will make decisions based on whatever they make decisions. So as I said, that's the government policy statement which guides.
Just quickly, sorry, just curious. With the 7 roads of significance and investment, is the government looking at overseas investment for those? I don't think it currently does it, to a large degree?
We're undertaking a PPP for the Northland package.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and the Northland projects, because it really is right to refer to them as in multiples, because the way we stage them, they will be multiple projects. It's such a large project corridor. It's big enough. It can aggregate enough that we can make it attractive to international investment. Something like the Woodend bypass, it's simply not really worth packaging in that way. It's not of interest to them.
Well, it seemed to work fairly well for the Auckland Harbour Bridge.
And the second harbour crossing, so the next crossing for Auckland, it's not in this government policy statement. I would expect that might be something that a minister adds in the next time around. That's large enough, orders of magnitude large enough that that probably is also packageable in that way. But all we can do is test what the international market's interested in and look at those opportunities as and when they arise. But Northland's the only one we've got on the books at the moment, and we're working through that with a bunch of international bidders right now. So we haven't selected a final partner, but there's 4, I think, big international consortia interested in the Northland project. But I've covered the GPS, but that's in a nutshell. It is extremely important, and as governments, ministers are inclined to be quite specific and directive to us, it's more important. And so that line of communication that local government has with ministers directly about what works and what hasn't worked is really important. You're welcome to tell me, and we'll communicate it to them too, but I can't overemphasise the importance of just direct dialogue with the ministry or the minister. If you like the fact that you've been more directed to spend money on potholes in pavement repair, great. If you don't, if you found that constraining, then you need to be telling ministers as they prepare to write the next one, because it is.
I can assure you we'll work through that process.
No doubt you will.
Can I just quickly go back to the revenue?
Yeah.
Because fuel excise tax has historically been like the core income earner in that space.
Yeah.
How big a shift with where are we at with putting road user charges on EVs? Because with the increase in EVs, obviously fuel use is
You could start to see the lines changing, particularly the future trend lines changing with the move to EVs, particularly the policies that supported EV uptake of the previous government. It wasn't yet having a significant impact on revenue, and at that stage, you're right, EVs didn't have road user charges, and they certainly weren't paying for excise duty, so they were getting into the system for free. This government changed that, so EVs are now paying road user charges, and there was some murmuring about whether the levy set was fair or not. The way to think about road user charges, actually, particularly for light vehicles, is that light vehicles under 1.5 tonne, definition of light vehicle, they're really only paying road user charges based on their use of space genuinely more than anything else. They don't do much damage to the road at all. So they're not, in that sense, paying for the damage they cause, because the damage they cause is negligible. It really is just a sort of calculation of you're taking up some room on the road that someone else can't use. And that's the thing. So in that sense, an EV light vehicle versus a diesel light vehicle, we're charging the same because you're doing the same. You're imposing the same cost on the system.
Yeah.
The higher you go in weight, absolutely, the more damage you do to the roads, and the heavy heavies really do need to pay based on the damage that they do. But EVs, it's not our job, and it's not the policy setting for road user charges to collect based on carbon, for example, right? It is about use of the system.
Yeah, well, the system wouldn't exist, if the roads weren't there, the EVs couldn't drive anyway, could they?
Correct. So in that sense, it's equitable that they're paying their contribution for their tiny, as it is for any individual vehicle, for their use of the system.
Yeah.
But you're right, as EV uptake increases, and petrol in particular decreases, then yes, the revenue we get from fuel excise duty will fall. Fuel excise duty is the easiest revenue collection Crown has. We send a bill to 4 companies, done. It is frictionless. It is so simple. There is no way to dodge it. Money and money. It's really simple. Road user charges are much more complicated. We need to do 2 things. One, yes, we need a road user charging system that is fit for future purpose, but that leaks less than it currently does, because there's no leakage on fuel excise duty. So we tend to conflate the 2 issues. But really what we're first trying to do is stand up what we call ERUC, so electronic road user charges, because a paper-based system is just old, clunky, expensive. It costs a lot per unit to collect, so we're bleeding a lot of revenue just in running the system. So that's one thing. And then what we then call fleet-wide RUC, which is effectively moving people off, and at some stage you would envisage just dropping fuel excise duty, so the at-pump cost for petrol would fall because you take that tax off. But you would then, as would a current road user charge part, you would then be up for road user charges for your petrol vehicle.
So the further you travel, the more you pay,
Correct.
basically.
And that's a system that the diesel or an EV owner currently is faced with. But we'd really like, and this is what we're working on, we'd really like to get our back office properly sorted so that it is much easier as a customer for you to frankly pay that bill, to understand what that bill is, so that it's much more like paying a power bill. you know, it's just a utility bill that you get, you can see your usage, you might be able to prepay if that's what helps you, or, you know, there's all those sorts of options, but you ought to be able to look it up on your phone or your computer or whatever. You oughtn't to have to sort of prepay and run around with paper-based receipts that it's clunky and hard.
Because as we bring in more heavy vehicles, electric vehicles, then how does that get fairly captured?
Likewise,
I'm just all about it being fair.
So we need to be setting it, or it needs to be set for us, to come back to my previous point, we need to be setting the rates of road user charge that fairly capture the cost they impose, those vehicles impose on the system. And heavy commercial vehicles are the ones that do the damage to the road, and so they need to pay commensurate with the cost they impose on the system. Right, RLTPs and RTCs. As I said, right at the top, we don't. The land transport system is delivered in partnership. It can feel at times, I think, a bit mechanistic. Nonetheless, the legislation, the Land Transport Management Act, does set up a cascade of gates, if you will, in decision making, and a key component is the regional one. I really should have swapped out the Horizons one for the Canterbury one, but that's right. Whatever. That is the front cover for the Horizons RLTP. So as you are building your long-term plans, we are going through a similar cycle building towards a national plan, offset in timing, which we will come to, I'm sure, in terms of the alignment of the timing of our 3-year cycle with the timing of your 3-year cycle. But we at a regional level in Canterbury are required to build a regional land transport plan, and the Regional Transport Committee, which is the bit that does it, which is a committee of the Regional Council, which each district council has a representative of, the regional council has 2 representatives of, and we as the agency have a representative of, and so I'm the representative of the agency on the Canterbury Committee. We have to go through that cycle of building an RLTP. The RTC will start that early next year for the next 3-year period. The easiest way to think about an RLTP is it's the list of prioritised projects. If a project isn't in the RLTP, we can't fund it. So you can't just think of a project and ask for money. It has to go through the process of getting inserted into the right plans, so that we can then build it into our plans and go from there. There are rules about who can propose things. For example, no matter how much a district might have a view about what state highway projects there are, the only authority that can propose a state highway project is us, but we do need to propose it into the right process so that there's clarity and transparency there. And we'll go through that process of building that list, and we'll rank it, and then publicly consult on it, and then fire it back to the agency again towards the end of next year, probably the beginning of the year after, given the timing of the election and the timing of the new government policy statement, because the other thing the list has to do is it has to give effect to the government policy statement. So they have to align those 2 things. When we get to the next slide, thank you very much. That's okay. The key component that if you're interested in state highway, but I mean, you guys will all be interested in your own programs. You know, that's your job. You know, you'll build your LTP. You'll have quite a nuanced view when you think about the trade-offs in your own transport program. The other program that most everyone else is interested in is the state highway program, and we build that we love acronyms at NZTA by what we call the SHIP. We have started to build the next SHIP now. We've already begun, and that is really our view of what state highway projects nationwide we think ought to be able to be done within the next 10 years. We are trying to do that with a view about what should be done rather than what can be afforded. The can be afforded is a lens we ought to put on afterwards. We ought to have a view about what is needed first. Then we can have a clear conversation regionally and nationally about the gap, if there is a gap, and how we prioritise that. But we'd like to be really clear about what we think is needed in the next 10 years first. Here's a question.
So state highway investment proposal Does that just relate to maintenance or does it relate
No,
everything?
It's both. It's both. It's both. Well, yeah. In this instance, you should think of it as both. There's another document that sits alongside it. Again, an acronym. It's the SHAMP. But it's our asset management plan. But really, yes, it should. The very biggest single line item in it will be our maintenance.
Okay.
You know, because it's such a large asset. When you aggregate that out, that's a huge cost, huge program over a 3-year period or a 10-year period. But it also ought to capture every other piece, like bridge renewals, for example, like bypasses that we've got on the go. It'll hoover up all of the in-flight projects that we've got that need to carry over from one 3-year period to the next one, but also everything else we think is likely to be worth doing or needed to be doing in the next 10 years. So we'll probably bring a draft of that to the RTC next year, middle of next year, Craig. And that's what you wrote is one that comes up. It's not in your district, but it's of interest always in South Canterbury. Is where is the Upward Bridge? You know, are we planning on replacing that or upgrading that, putting an extra lane on it, those sorts of things, any time in the next 10 years? Because again, if it's not in the list, it can't, you know, if it doesn't make it into the regional plan, it can't make it into the national. The one caveat to that is if a government changes and just tells us that we have to relook at something, and we'll do that. But you know, in line with government policy, we try to build a ship that we think is fair and reasonable, but also meets the needs of the highway. Okay, so we've built the ship, we've introduced our list of programs, you've introduced your list of programs, and they've all gone into the hopper called the Regional Land Transport Plan. That's gone out for public consultation. It's been signed off by the Regional Council because it is ultimately a document of the Regional Councils. That then comes back to us and we build the National Land Transport Program. And so the next one will be, let's just say 1 September 2027. Feels like a really long time away. It's actually genuinely not in terms of the amount of work that's required to get there. But the NLTP is the program for us. At the moment, it's expressed in 3 years. As I say, this government policy statement and probably future government policy statements all say the next one needs to be a 10-year one. So it'll probably be a 27-37 NLTP. And that really is fundamentally the list of projects, ours and yours, that we have an expectation of funding in that period. There's a whole bunch of mechanics behind that, but in terms of, you know, correct procurement and all sorts of things that actually, you know, you have to jump through in order to get the money. But in order to get the subsidy from us, you need to be in the National Land Transport Program. And so, as I say, the NLTP, the one up there, the 24-27, that's the most expensive NLTP we've ever run as a country, and yet it's tiny compared to probably future ones that are coming. So there really is a focus on what the next GPS contains, you know, what are prioritised, and then therefore what will make it into the next 24-27 NLTP, because the desires aggregated around the country vastly outweigh the amount of available money, and unless more money is tipped into the system, we will be disappointing some people somewhere quite dramatically. The most important part, I suspect, for a district like yours out of the NLTP is this bit. So, you know, what you are most looking for in your projects that are listed in the NLTP is our commitment to financial assistance rates. So we set a FAR for all approved organisations, most of whom are councils, but something like DOC is an AO, because they have roads that we subsidise. There are a few others, but mostly they're councils. The base is 51% at the moment. The most a council receives is Buller at 88%. And that is a sliding scale based, most easily explained, based on a district's deprivation. Not the state of your books, not how much you want to rate. At this stage, taking no account of rates caps or things like that, and that's an interesting span that we'll have to work our way through, but fundamentally on a district's ability to pay. Right? 51 is the floor, 88 is the cap. We will be looking at the financial assistance rate policy ahead of the next NLTP. I have absolutely no doubt local government will be loud and vocal about whatever it is that we happen to propose. I've seen no hint of what that might look like, but I'll tell you right now, for example, Southland District is very clear it wants the floor lowered. It wants financial assistance rates to be able to drop lower than 51% because its contention is that if we did that, if let's just say we went to 30, I'm just picking a number out for argument's sake, it's not actually what Southland argue, Auckland would drop lower, and that would mean more money was available in the pot to go either for more projects or for others to shift out. A lot of you are clustered at 51%, but you just are. Right, and if we dropped that floor further, then Auckland would have to do more unsubsidised or lower subsidised projects. They'd have to fund more from their rates, and others would. And from Southland's point of view, their belief is they would benefit from more subsidy, from more money available for something elsewhere. It's an interesting argument. I think it is actually, frankly, more nuanced than currently looked at. But it is undoubtedly an area of interest for local government, and it has clearly an extremely large impact on your ability to undertake a transport program. It would be fair to say, though, as I said, even in the maintenance space, and it is usually the maintenance space that far is most important, because a number of councils just don't have large new capital improvement projects at any particular site, in which you've all got road maintenance to do. You will be laser focused on the impact of our FAR on your LTP, because if it isn't subsidised by us, you've got two choices: defer the work or pay for it yourselves.
That'll become increasingly important with rates capping.
There you go, right? So a lot of councils undertake some degree of unsubsidised work, because the truth is, at the very end of the program, or let's just say maintenance of your maintenance program, where you've run out effectively of our subsidy because we didn't have as much money as people reside, and it is hard sometimes, rightly so, to say no, we're not going to fix that road or fix those potholes. You'll have to wait 3 years or what have you. But it is clearly increasingly difficult for councils to simply turn around and go, okay, well, it's okay, we'll find money somewhere, because those avenues for somewhere are closing on you. So I suspect that this will become an extremely important avenue of inquiry.
So is the level of spend or the budget taken into account when you're setting these FAR rates? Because obviously we're a tiny budget for roading.
You are.
So to have us at 69 cents is very cost effective, I believe. But also that it doesn't have a big dollar impact, whereas if you had Christchurch at that level would have a massive impact.
Yeah, and Buller, Buller is tiny. So yes, it's at 88%, but its local network is small. It's a district largely served by our state highways, which we bank 100% for anyway. So it's not actually an explicit part of the policy though. So you could argue that it should be. You might want to make that representation to us. But the benefit to the district and the network in general is better than the dollar for dollar.
Because it has a massive impact on our rates, because we are per capita the highest roading network per capita.
Yes, I know. It's a point you love. I'm pleased that you do.
Nicole, got a question?
It's a timing.
I knew you'd come to timing, yeah.
Given our LTP, we really, now with the changes and what's coming, we need to get a bit of a feel and a steer before we've adopted our LTP, because the information comes after.
Yeah.
A lot of assumptions which are really difficult to work with.
You're absolutely right, and there is an inescapable chicken and egg here. And I don't mean to dodge the question, I'll try to satisfy you, but there is, no matter how we set the timings, there is always something going to be going first and something going to be informed by that, which might need to then change, which then needs something else to be we are always going to be iterating, and particularly if we head to a 10-year program, there is no certainty in those out years. We'll give you more certainty than we currently give you, which is precisely 0 in year 4. But so I think there is no escaping annual iteration of some kind. We adopt a 3-year NLTP at the moment, and yet by year 2 we're busy varying here, left, right and centre. Councils are busy moving programs around. We've decided something's happened or there's been an emergency event, we've moved, so programs are never set in stone. That said, look, particularly the timing that's caused by, I don't want to sound like I'm blaming it, I'm merely just explaining the way things fall. An election, a new GPS after that might not be issued until the beginning of the year after, that can cause quite dramatic, and it certainly did this last time around, dramatic swings in where funding is allocated, how much is available. It caused dramatic changes to council maintenance programs, for example. That, by which point you're deep in your LTPs, and we're busy going, well, now hang on a second, we need new advice. And so we're not blind to it. I think the FAR policy in particular is one you will want to say to us, hey, give us as much clarity as early as you can.
And we need to know those percentages of
Totally.
going to land. If we're only dealing with a 4% ceiling.
Totally agree. If we change it by 2%.
And if you come up with a much lower number because Southland have got their way, then our hands are up to have a chat to the minister that we're an example where our percentage rate has to be higher than 4%.
Exactly. The other place it plays out, less obvious direct impact, but could be actually, depending on what happens, deeply dramatic impact is our emergency works policy. So last time around we decided, because in the 3 years previous we had faced an enormous cost for emergency works, because we top up, obviously we pay 100% of the state highway emergency works, but we top up districts for the costs of emergencies under our emergency works policy. We reached the conclusion that was causing us quite considerable cash flow problems and quite considerable risk on our overall program, so we consulted on altering the emergency works policy. To be clear, there's detail there, but to be clear, the consequence of that was to fund less for emergency works, thus putting more cost of emergency works onto councils. Local government was really clear to us about the impact of that on your balance sheets. And in the end, our board chose not to change the policy. I'm going to talk about 2 years of consultation to reach no change. But that's another really live example where if you are subject to significant weather events, and they are happening increasingly, it's just where they happen changes, that can have an enormous impact on your balance sheets. Stuart?
James, just another question of curiosity, listening to what you've just said about government and the GPS. The appropriation you get out of Treasury
yes.
to NZTA, is it more based on the GPS, or do they take into account the NLTP, or is the timing just not?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. So I've actually dodged that issue so far. So you've called me out. It's quite nice. So I talked about revenue as though it is all fed and ruck and those other little things. But increasingly, Stuart, you're right. That demand versus available revenue has gotten so far out of whack. For the last couple of cycles, we have been topped up by direct Crown grant. So we are also, there is also a line in there that is actually 2 different types of direct Crown injection. For some things, and earlier on, particularly under the last Labor government, Crown chose to directly pay for particular projects. So post-COVID, as with local government, with us as well, they looked around for shovel-ready projects that could stimulate the economy, and they picked a whole bunch and they threw a whole lot of money at them. Those were directly Crown-funded projects, so that was ministers choosing to purchase particular projects, went around that. It was a way of escaping that independent.
So it was tied funding in terms.
It was tied funding direct
to your budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this government has chosen to do a different way to tip money from Treasury into the NLTP, right? To top up the amount of money available to us to then decide what to fund. But to be clear, largely the same outcome, because the revenue gap, the things that are unfunded, that the extra money poured in allows to fund, are explicitly the Crown's priorities anyway. So they're fundamentally getting the same thing. It just means we can use our ordinary, normal board oversight mechanisms rather than having to report an entirely separate set of stuff off to Treasury, which actually just got really, really cumbersome. Okay, but yeah, we are increasingly getting a couple of $1 billion each year from the Crown, topping up the amount of money because the normal revenue mechanisms. Remember, government paused increases to Fed and RUC during COVID, and that gap has created a sort of a wedge of unfunded issues that for various reasons, governments are reluctant to play catch up on because it means to do it across the top.
I think it's important, James, say that it is done through the National Transport Plan, because it stops my minister's going to get me the new bridge thing like we have seen in the past.
That would be my comment too, and I know you've heard me say it a number of times. One of the things that sometimes struggles to get national attention is resilience. There are a lot of resilience projects. Surprisingly, there are a lot of resilience projects unfunded in the South Island. There are probably more than there will ever be money for. Okay, but the question is, you can play two games. You can look at a list of projects and go, well, my project isn't on there. I'm going to lobby the minister to get the list changed and have my project listed in the GPS so that NZTA have to fund it. Yeah, that's a game you can play. I think that depends on your ability to argue your case with ministers. That's fine. Or you can say, well, I actually can play a different game. I'm going to ask that ministers step back from picking winners and losers, that basically fund the system enough, and that the overs and unders year on year are that when I've got a good project, it'll get funded, and when my project isn't important enough, it won't, and that's just the way that is. That is more the system that we've had in the past. It isn't the system we really have at the moment. I think that is a stronger system for smaller population areas, because when they're really in need, they'll benefit from it, and when they're not, well, they won't, but they'll never have the megaphone that Auckland has.
So I'm just aware of the time.
Yeah, no, the NLTP I've come on to. Just to come back to timing question, because it's a really important one, which is why I don't think we can ever escape some grinding of gears in terms of timing. The way the law currently is written, for a project to be put into the RLTP and then the NLTP and then get funded from us, it actually has to have financial backing from the agency putting it forward. So it needs to be committed to in your LTP. Actually, strictly, the way you read the law, is it has to be committed to such that if we didn't fund it, you'd fund it anyway. Now, we'll kind of recognise that's very unlikely. Yeah.
Some laws are meant to be broken.
Yes. But the point is, we need the commitment. Councils love, and I understand how it happens, but councils like to have the conversation that says, if you agree to fund it, we'll put it forward. Okay, I understand that because you've got to balance your books too, but actually the law does require it to go the other way. This is what we want to do, and then we go, well, if that matches enough with government policy, it's an important enough project, we'll subsidise it. That's actually the way the system is designed to work, but we fall into the other conversation. And so now, a lot of councils, unless we subsidise, they won't do it. And I understand that because you're so financially constrained, but it's genuinely not how the system is designed to work. And so we're asking the machinery to do something it can't do. We'll just sort of work
I
backwards.
think the biggest challenge for us though, James, is our team put together a rating budget, so say this is what we need to spend to maintain the level of service we have now.
Yeah.
And we put that bid into NZTA, and we base all our LTP on those numbers that are given to us.
Yep.
And then you come back to us and say, well, we're not going to fund what you've asked for. You're going to get 20% less, and that always falls halfway through, past the critical part in the process. And we've been lucky in the past where I know some of our neighbours have had to go back and completely do their redo their LTP with the new figures.
And you're all getting angry letters from Audit New Zealand.
Yeah, and not only are we getting angry letters, but we're also getting an additional $20,000 chucked on the bill at the end of it as well.
Yep.
Is there a mechanism to avoid that happening?
The short answer is no. Not unless you can get governments to issue government policy statements faster post-election. Realistically, we try as soon as we have even a draft GPS to give even draft guidance to officers about the likely, particularly when it comes to maintenance, about the likely budgets for maintenance. We all had massively increased maintenance allocations this last cycle. It was still less than most councils asked for. So you all asked for dramatically more than you got, even though that was dramatically more than you'd received before. Right, so you all had objectively more money to spend on maintenance, including ourselves on the state highway, and yet it was less than you asked for, and so you then had to face going back to either cutting back your program or asking for more money from the ratepayer than you asked. And it's simply about the time when we've got guidance about what it is we're allowed to go forward versus where you are with your LTP processes.
I think the important part of this conversation too, though, James, is we don't abolish roads. It's the levels of service of those roads, and then it becomes a safety issue.
Correct.
It comes back to your question, Lisa, about why we've got fatal accidents and injury accidents on our books.
Yeah.
As a measure, I was talking about measures before.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Okay, so
I feel none. Yeah.
projects, local projects.
Just at least the last. This is just to give you a sense of how much we're spending in Canterbury this current cycle, and it will inevitably be more. I'm not just simply talking about inflation. We've got an awful lot on the books ourselves. I'm not commenting on your particular program, but as a region, district councils, we've got an awful lot coming up as well. So we are not quiet. There is an awful lot of expenditure occurring.
So just thank you for our 2 new bridges.
You're welcome.
We're very pleased to get those.
Nothing better than a bridge opening, so I'm looking forward to when they happen.
Yes. The only thing is we have major concerns around the safety issues that the cycleway will create with the Forks Hotel being the end destination. So you're aware of the cycleway that's going from Waimate to the Waiho Forks?
I am. I will take it away though as a note to ask. The one thing I didn't raise.
Yes.
You're now sick of me holding up, but the other thing that strongly tied our hands on was funding for cycles.
Yes, and I realise that, but I'm just concerned. Something around the safety factor, James, is that it's a state highway, and at this time of the year, it's an exceedingly busy state highway. And of course, the cycleway is got to cross that bridge. That sort of thing. I know there has been a comment about they're putting monkey paws, I think they're called. Monkey toes on, so that it can be clipped on later. But it seems ridiculous to me that you know, obviously the best time to do something like this is when the project's being done, and you know, listen, and I know the group's keen to work with NZTA to, you know, come up with a suitable solution that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, but to be clear, and I'm really trying hard not to hide behind it, but actually the minister was.
Yes, and
as explicit as he was allowed to be in the GPS.
And I fully understand.
Spend money like this on a cycle basis. So we, particularly in the state highway network, because we have no other source, right? At least if we say we're not going to subsidise, you have the choice to go and do our some of those. We don't have that discretion at all. You know, we've got that. No.
And I would couch this as a safety issue rather than
I
a
understand.
cyberway issue.
I understand. Yep. Yep.
Can I just have one really
Of
quick
course.
thing? I know you've got to go, but Glen speed signs, any speed limit through there, any talk about that going back out for?
Regular talk about that. I just simply can't give you the timing on it. Glen is absolutely on our radar.
It is?
Yep, it's 100%.
Right.
Yep.
Okay,
So the speed rule that the minister promulgated required us to change Glen, re-raise Glen. We're well aware of the local community's views on Glen, and when we have the resource, we will come to address it.
Yeah, and I think it was just really disappointing nationally that the data was taken as a national overview, not on
Again,
individual
the
sites.
rule was so prescriptive of how we had to interpret.
Yeah, and I'm not getting it.
No.
Just saying that
Totally understand.
it was a flawed consultation method where they took a national view because everybody wants to get there quicker, but locally.
Yep. No, and you could see it in the data. You could quite clearly see it in the data. Yeah. No, Glen is on my long list. Believe me.
Well, thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
I think hopefully it was gives some of the new councillors a bit of an understanding of the complex world in which we live in.
Look, as we start to talk projects and as we start to talk numbers, I have no doubt the conversations will be real isn't quite the right way, but more pointed, and that's great. So whenever you want the more detailed conversation.
And our local man here is, I don't know his name, that we have you're the overall, but there's a person that sort of deals.
There's a bunch, it depends what we're talking about really. If we're talking about maintenance, it's probably Scott, Chris and Timaru.
Yeah.
It is just worth saying on maintenance that we are in the process of changing our maintenance contracts quite substantially, and I'll probably have more to tell you collectively or Craig via RTC early next year when they go live.
Yeah.
But we have been unhappy with the performance of the contractor in South Canterbury and hoping for improvement.
Yeah, but we're unhappy with it as well because they've just done the gorge and they're back in there fixing it less than 12 months later. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. We'll might as well break for morning tea on that. Hopefully everybody can join us for morning tea, and we'll be back in here say 10 minutes, and we'll get back into the next presentation, which is all about our favourite animals, wallabies.
Thank you. Just so I could get a feel for.
The only thing I was saying to Craig,
Yeah, there's also.
you can have a spin at the end. Be made, whatever this.
Quite a few forwards.
Because what?
3 forwards.
What Tom said, I don't.
While we're building.
Yeah. What's the build?
Well, that's fine, that's.
Shut up.
That actually I don't have on the top of my head. It won't be hugely long.
That's the other thing I don't know.
Please do, because I'll go.
Things that mention up later.
I've got a chance to think.
Impressed, just about everybody.
Yeah, I know. That's why you need.
If you want to make a start.
I'm just wondering what the advantage you get to be.
Yeah.